All right. Simplified reloading. I'm going to try to make this as easy for you as possible. I don't have any real brand loyalty when it comes to a lot of things as far as reloading gear goes. Most companies will make a really good kit that comes with a press and a scale and various other little items that we'll get into here in a minute. And I mix and match different manufacturers' equipment. I'm not going to go into bashing manufacturers or their equipment. What you see here is kind of what I use and what has worked for me for many years. We're going to do a real simple overview, and then we'll do part 1, 2, and however many parts it takes to go through this and get you either started reloading or up your reloading game to make your ammunition as accurate as it possibly can be for your chosen application. So let's get started. You need a good press, whether it be a single stage or a multi-stage or progressive press. It doesn't really matter, but get yourself a good press and get it mounted really well. Wood screws and screwing it down to a bench doesn't work really well, especially if you're doing large calibers. You're going to want to either make yourself a stand or buy yourself a stand. Then one of the things I recommend is getting yourself one of these universal decapping dies, because your dies, they're expensive, and they're really nice, and you clean them from the factory, and the last thing you want to do is be picking up brass up off the ground that's got dirt and gravel and stuff and running them into your real nice brass. So what I do is I'll deprime all of my brass first. Here I've got one piece deprimed, and then after they're deprimed, I will load them into a sonic cleaner like this one here. Now, I have owned several sonic cleaners over the years. This one runs about, I think $50-something on Amazon. And they last me a couple of years. I bought the really expensive ones from ammunition and reloading manufacturers, and they're expensive and they don't last any longer than these Amazon ones. They're obviously from China or wherever, but that's just kind of what it is. So after I run them through the sonic cleaner and I get all the carbon out, you can see here that the primer pocket's full of carbon, and there's all sorts of carbon in here. The ultrasonic cleaner is going to clean that brass to the best possible ability. And then what I'll do is I run them through my annealing machine. Now this is a ugly annealer. I think it was $300 or $350. It'll do everything from my 224 Valkyrie all the way up to 338 Lapua without a problem. But you don't have to spend that. What you can do, go to Harbor Freight like I did, because I'm cheap, and buy yourself a drill. And everybody's got sockets at home. Chuck up a socket, and you can just run your flame right there. You'll want to use Temple Lac. We'll get into that in a later episode, so that you're heating this case up to about 700 degrees. Now the reason for that is if you heat this case up to 700 degrees, once you fire it, what happens is it realigns all the molecules and crystals and whatever's in the structure of that brass, and makes it a consistently malleable piece of metal. Think about it like this. If you take an old wire coat hanger and you bend it 20 times, it's going to break. But if you heat that coat hanger, you bend it, heat that coat hanger up to 700 something degrees, and then let it cool, and bend it, and then keep heating it, all of a sudden it's not going to break at 20 break, or it's not going to break at 20 bends. You might get 60, 80, even 100 bends out of it. The other thing it does for you is it keeps your neck tension always consistent across all of your brass. So you don't have some that are getting worked a little bit harder or a little bit less hard. It's going to pay dividends for you in the future. Now, if I'm just making a bunch of 223 plinking ammunition for shooting cans and potatoes and playing with, I don't bother annealing. But when I spend really good money for expensive brass, like this brass, this Lapua brass, I make sure to anneal it every time. All right, moving on. So once we've gone through our annealing process with either our socket or if you go out and buy an annealer, I've built 2 or 3 of them over the years. And the whole point of having an annealing machine is to set it up so that you can basically ignore it and do other things in your shop. Do other pieces of brass or whatever else you're doing in your shop. So this thing just runs by itself in the background. Obviously it's a torch that you've got going, so you don't want to just turn it on and leave the shop. But something like this does free you up and free up time, because you could just load it up and then keep doing other stuff along with your reloading process. So then, once this is annealed, then we take our nice clean dies, and I use full length dies every time. I actually use full length and bushing dies. We'll get into that in a little bit, or probably in the next episode. But then you'll use your case lube, whatever type of case lube you like. I've actually gotten to the point to where my local store doesn't carry this anymore, so I just started making my own. You can look up on YouTube how to make your own case lube. It's pretty simple and pretty cheap stuff. So then once this is done, all right, so then what we do is we run our piece of brass up into our clean resizing die with our case lube on it, and go ahead and resize it. And we're going to teach in a different episode how to set up your dies so that you're getting the most life and the most accuracy out of your brass as possible. But once you've gone ahead and resized this, then it goes into the tumbler. I put mine in the tumbler after I'm done, and before I go to bed at night, I just turn them on and I let them run all dang night, and they come out nice and shiny. The next morning, I shut them off, and then when I get back to my shop to reload some more, then is the next most important thing that we have to do. In your reloading manual, you will find out what your minimum and maximum case length is. And I don't recommend going out and buying a $300 one of these. They sell them at Harbor Freight and Amazon for 20 bucks. And I've never had an issue with them. They're either work right out of the box and just work, or they're just garbage and they don't work, and then you just take them back or whatever. But then you can measure your cartridge and see where it's at, look in your book, and decide if you need to trim it or not. I generally trim mine down to the minimum length every time for all my precision stuff. That way my bullets are all seated correctly. The easiest way to do this is with this Frankford Arsenal little kit here. This will do everything from like my 223 to my 224 Valkyrie, all the way up to my 338 Lapua. It's a pretty simple little device here. You just chuck it up in your cordless drill. obviously you've got to read the instructions, and then set it up. You just push your bullet in and start cutting, or not your bullet, your brass, and start cutting and until it bottoms out. And then you've gone through all your brass, and now all your brass is the exact same size. So you've got the exact same amount of tension holding on all of your bullets. So and we'll talk about this again later. You're going to get your standard deviation numbers and your extreme spread numbers down. So after you trim it down, you've got a little tool here that comes in most of the kits. It's a chamfer and deburring tool, because you'll flatten that edge as you're trimming it, so you can go in there real quick and do something like that just to clean up your edges. What I really like is I've got this one. This is a whole unit. Not that I hardly ever use the primer pocket cleaner, just because I run it through the Sonic Bath. But it's got the trimmer here, and then right on the same machine you've got the chamfer and deburring tool. So for me, I load a lot of ammunition, and it just cuts down on the time that you're working by having this little more expensive machine that will just do everything for you. So once you get your case resized, trimmed, chamfered, and deburred, one of the things that you might invest in, you don't need to do right off the bat, but oh, that's not the right one. This is a go, no-go gauge for your primer pockets to see if it'll fit. So if it fits, you're good, and then the other side, if it doesn't go in, it means it's still going to hold the primer tight. That's probably for me, one of the biggest killers of my brass is the primer pockets just finally wear out, because I just never split the case necks. Once you get the case trimmed and deburred and ready to go, then we move on to priming. This is one of my favorite priming tools that I've ever had. I've primed off of my press, and I've primed all sorts of different ways. This has probably been the best one that I've had for just an all-in-one kit that does everything. Let me qualify that when I say it does everything. You get bigger cartridges, like my 338 Lapua. All right, so priming tools. This is one that I actually use for my 338 Lapua. What it does is it gives you a little bit more feel. Obviously, it's a little bit slower. You hand load the primer into this little pocket here, put your piece of brass in, and then it gives you a little bit more feel. And the reason I use this versus this for that big cartridge is, you know, when I shoot one of my Creedmoors, you know, it costs me about $1 a round to $1.25 a round. But shooting that Lapua, that cost me closer to $3 to $4 a round. So I make sure it's absolutely perfect, and use this little Lee press here, literally just for strictly reloading that larger, more expensive cartridge. It just gives me a little bit better product that I'm happy with. This, on the other hand, boy, this saves a lot of time. All right, so we're chamfered, we're deburred, we are primed, we're ready to go. The next thing that I use two different types of reloading, or two different types of powder throwers. One, this is what I use for everything that is under 50 grains and is running a ball powder. This meter's exceptionally consistently. I've got a little stand over on my bench that it just drops right in, and then you could just put your case in there and pull the lever and it drops the load in. So these are exceptionally precise and perceptually accurate. And with your powder scale, figure out what load you need, and we'll go into this in a lot more depth in later episodes. But if you're running a ball powder, these things are so accurate that I'll do 10 loads or 10 rounds, and if they all come out about perfect, I don't even look at it again. I just start loading cases, and I'll fill up block or cases, and I'll get 50 of them full, and then set it aside, and we'll start loading bullets. This machine here is wonderful for stick powder. The stick powders, they don't run through this very well. It cuts them, and it will, you won't get 100% accurate load every time running the stick powder. So you'll need to get one of these little tricklers, and you'll fill this up, and you just set it right next to your scale, just like this. I don't know if you can see that well or not. You'll just set it up so it dumps into your powder scale. Let me move this a little bit here so you can see this a little bit better. You could just set it up here so it will trickle in. So you set, if you have to run one of these powder throwers with stick powder, you just set it a little bit low, and then you can trickle your powder in. The beauty of this device, and so many different manufacturers make different ones, is you just set it up and let it go, and it'll beep at you and tell you when the cartridge is ready, and you take the powder and you just use your little funnel and dump it in there and set the thing back on, and it'll run it for you. I try to run as much ball powder as I can, as long as I can keep the accuracy there. But some cartridges just run better with some stick powders. The beauty of this powder thrower is I can usually charge about 3 cases, even if I have to trickle, per this thing throwing 1 charge. So it's significantly faster. However, this is one of those things, just like the annealer. Once you set it up, you can do other things in your process, and then every time this thing beeps at you, just go throw another piece of powder. And so you can kind of get 2 things accomplished at the same time. Now, moving on. You've got your powder in. We've seated our bullet. Me personally, I like these aftermarket, or you can buy them right with the set, that will let you adjust your bullet seating depth and give you your measurements, instead of playing with a die and then always constantly having to go back to this and up and down. Here it'll tell you, you need to move it down 2 thousandths, or you need to come up 2 thousandths. It'll just do it right there for you on the die. It'll get you a lot closer than giving a little screw 1/8 of a turn and not having any measurement on it. So I do highly recommend investing in this, whether it be the Hornady or the Lee or Redding or RCBS. Get yourself the bullet seating die that is going to make your life a little bit easier. So what a lot of people will do is they will go ahead and measure their overall length. And yeah, overall length is important, but that's not going to give you a real true measurement of what you need, because we want to measure the bearing surface, the beginning of the bearing surface of this bullet, the ogive, which is right in here, right where it starts contacting the lands or the rifling, whatever you want to call it for your rifle. Terminology is important, but in this case, we're not worried so much about terminology. We're just working on teaching the basics. So what happens is you stick your bullet in there, and these little collets, you'll have to pick up the right size for your bullets. I think this is a Hornady brand. It comes with 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever, and so now you're getting a much more accurate measurement of the length of bullet that you're, or the overall length of your cartridge. Obviously, you want to look at your book and not go so long that it won't chamber, but this is going to give you a lot more accurate or measurement, so that you can track stuff a little bit more in the future. So once you've got your bullet seated, you're ready to go. Now, one of the most important things is good record keeping, and making sure that this is just one of my cattle books here, making sure that as you're developing loads and you're going through your testing, you can go back and track what you did, what didn't work, what worked, write everything down. Once I've got everything down for whatever caliber I'm doing, the next thing I'll do is I will take a piece of paper here like this and write everything down that I need. So I've got it right there plastered on one of my cabinet doors, and I don't need to worry about it. So here's my 223 Remington. I've got 80 grains, shooting an 80 grain bullet. I'm running 6.5 stay ball, my ogive seat where it is, and then we'll get into this in a later episode. My lands are at this, and so my seat is here. So now, for the life of that barrel, I don't ever have to mess with anything. All I have to do is randomly measure the lands. We'll teach that in a later class. And then come back to where my offset is and just do the math, and then you could just change your seating depth. Obviously that we get into a little bit farther. But I've got the primer that I'm using, and then my trim to length. So everything that I need to know, I've already got written right here. I've done all my loading here in my book, and obviously when I start a new book, I put the dates on here. It's 2024, and all my old books are obviously dated later. That's kind of, in a nutshell, the easiest way to get started loading. Hopefully I didn't cause more confusion than I did help. Like I said, this is going to be a whole series that I'm doing. We're going to go step by step as we go on. But this is just kind of a basic beginner's reloading. Every bit of information that I gave you, you're going to be able to find in just about any reloading manual. Do a little bit of reading. This is not rocket science. Well, it's not rocket science. It's ballistics. It is very simple, easy to get started. Once again, I recommend buying a kit to get started with, and then if you decide you don't like it, you're not out that much money. If you decide that you fall in love with it and you start doing a lot of it, then you can start spending more money and buying things like an annealer and things like that to speed up your process. So, all right, stay tuned for the next episode. Good day.